What's up, awesome YouTubers? Ryan1988 or Justin back here to do another video for you all. And today's video, I'm going to continue on with my favorite horror movies list and talk about 51 through 32. And if you like this video, maybe we'll just go to 100. I don't know. But I also realized that last video was so hard to make. You know, you probably can feel what I feel when it's like when you're making a list like your favorite movies of all time, you're always either going to forget one or you're going to be like, I wish I could talk about that movie, but it doesn't rank there. That's what I feel when it comes to making lists. And there's a lot of horror movies that I just love so much that I wanted to make a part 2. So this is part 2 of my favorite horror movies of all time. 51 through 32. And we're gonna just go through these, and I'm just gonna go through them. So just know that this is 51 through 32. And we're gonna talk about them because I love all these movies. And I wanted to mention them in a part 2. So, starting off, we have Happy Birthday to Me. One of the first slasher movies that I saw outside of the main slasher franchises. You know, I'd seen the Halloween movies and Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. And I wanted to dive into some other horror movies and some other slasher movies. And Happy Birthday to Me was one of them. And I remember back in the day when you could rent DVDs from Blockbuster online, and then they would come in the mail and you would rent them and return them. Happy Birthday to Me was one of them. And then I wanted to buy it right away after I saw it. So I got it 1 year for my birthday, ironically. And I love this movie so much. I know some people don't, but I've always been one that loves it. And if you've never seen Happy Birthday to Me, if you've seen this iconic cover, but you've never seen the movie, definitely go watch it. It is worth adding to your watch list, especially this October season. So I think this is also perfect video to do because there are so many great horror movies that maybe you haven't seen yet. So if Happy Birthday to Me is one you've never seen, either buy it or see if it's streaming somewhere. So going on, we have another slasher movie. I think the next two are going to be those 80s slashers that came out in the golden age of the slasher era. And the next one is Prom Night. Again, I love all these movies, so you're going to hear me say that. And like Happy Birthday to Me, Prom Night was one of those movies that I saw outside the main horror movie franchises, and I wanted to dive into more of them. And so I remember buying the really terrible DVD transfer that came out, and it had Jamie Lee Curtis in the shape of a knife, and it was like an image from Halloween H2O, an image of her face from Halloween H2O, and it was just a really bad DVD, and you really couldn't see much of what was going on. Then we had several other editions come out, and then Synapse released this one, and it is amazing. But Prom Night, iconic in my opinion as far as a horror movie goes. I love this movie. Love the killer. Love the look of the killer. Just very simple but creepy and eerie, and the voice gets you when you watch it for the first time. And it takes a while for the killings or the slashing to start. You know, the movie builds up to Prom Night, and that's when you know, the 4 people are picked off one by one. So it's a build-up horror movie, but I appreciate for what it is because you get to know the characters and you know who they are, and I love it so much. So Prom Night definitely deserves to be on this list, and wanted to talk about it. Up next, we have The Burning. Again, I mentioned, you know, we had Happy Birthday to Me, Prom Night, and then this is the third one kind of back to back when it comes to the golden age of the slasher era. And The Burning is great. I watch it every year, at least once a year during the summertime, and absolutely love it. Cropsy, great killer, pretty creepy. You have some really good kills in this movie and some great suspense, and I love it so much. So The Burning, definitely needed to talk about that one. Up next, we have, and I'll just talk about both of them because they're back to back. We have Hellraiser and then Hellraiser 2 right after that. So Hellraiser, absolutely love it. And Hellbound Hellraiser 2, I love it even more. These are both great films. And I love, like with Halloween and Halloween 2, I love watching these movies back to back. It's like one big movie when you watch them. And, you know, this was a great introduction to the franchise. And then, you know, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, like, I just love the expanding of the story, and I love everything about Leviathan and where the Cenobites came from. So, you know, it was just great. And again, a great continuation. So for me, these are the two best of the franchise. And I will definitely be watching at least these two this upcoming October season. I also love, you know, Hellraiser 3, Bloodline, and the reboot from 2022. They're all great movies. But yeah, I definitely wanted to mention these films and talk about them. So Evil Dead 2. Mentioned the first one in the, you know, my top 31 favorite horror movies list. Evil Dead 2 had to be mentioned in this. This is awesome. And some years I like this better than the first one. I mentioned that in the last video. But right now, this is like my second favorite. Sometimes I like the scares, and so when I like the scares, like with the first Evil Dead, I pick that as my favorite of the franchise. And then sometimes if I like the horror movie comedy aspect of it, Evil Dead 2. This is honestly just a really strong franchise, and it's in my top 10 favorite horror movie franchises. So, Evil Dead 2 rocks. Absolutely love it. It's a remake and sequel put together. And I adore this movie. So, Evil Dead 2. Then we have The Exorcist 3. Another one that I love. Again, so painful that, you know, it's higher on the list, or lower on the list of my favorite horror movies. And for a while, I said this was the best of the franchise, but then I revisited The Exorcist, and that's the best one. However, this is a close second, and it's quite scary, it's quite chilling, and I love it so much. It's connected to the franchise, but it's also a movie that stands on its own, and it's its own story, so I love that as well. But The Exorcist 3, just great. Great movie. Continuing on, The Blob. I watch this 2 or 3 times a year. And between the great cast, and then you have that iconic, I think it's iconic, song at the end of the movie, Brave New Love by Alien. I just adore this movie. And I love the practical effects. I love the small atmospheric town that it takes place in. You know, it's your kind of everyday town, hometown with, you know, your high school football team that everybody loves. So, like, it's just a small town feel, and that's what I love about the movie. One of the things I love about the movie. So, The Blob, the remake from 1988, just awesome. Continuing on, Pet Sematary. I mentioned this in my honorable mentions in the last video, so I have to talk about it again because it needs to be on this list. Again, I'm not really counting it down. This is just 51 through 32. So hopefully you're kind of keeping an eye on it. If not, just know that these movies are in that kind of time span, call it time span, or that span of movies that I'm talking about. But yeah, Pet Sematary. Classic movie. One of the first movies to scare me. Zelda is terrifying, but it's also one of the most heartbreaking horror movies out there. I love this. You know, some people say they don't like some of the cast members. They think, you know, some of the acting's cheesy. I don't see it. I think this just is an awesome horror movie, and love it so much. Pet Sematary. I don't know if I should say this 5 times, so I'm only going to try to say it once. Candyman. Yes! This movie right here. Again, if I was going to do a part 2 video, I had to talk about Candyman. Said it twice. Only twice. I just really love it. Scary, intense, brutal. It's ironically a great love story in some aspects. Or it's just a great love story in there. It's a really macabre and disturbing love story, but there's a love story in there. If you know what I mean. But yeah, awesome movie. You know, Clive Barker did not direct this, but it is based on his short story. But Bernard Rose does such a great job with this movie. And over 30 years later, it is still one of the scariest movies. So, Candyman, said it 3 times. Not going to say it 2 more. The next 2 go back to back. We have It Chapter 1. Now, I love It Chapter 2, but it's not as strong as this movie, and it's not as strong as the miniseries from 1990. And like I talked about with Salem's Lot, like for me, this movie right here is a horror movie. Yes, it's a TV movie, but for me, you know, whether it's theatrical or TV, I look at them the same way. Because these are films that I saw a lot of these movies on TV for the first time. And so I've always considered them movies. And for the longest time, I didn't know they were TV movies. So when I was a kid, like, I had no idea that this was a TV movie until I got older. But It Chapter 1, this was just such a great theater experience. I think I saw it 3 times in theaters. You know it's an awesome movie when you go back and you watch it over and over in theaters. And I just love this movie so much. This movie terrified me as a kid. The original miniseries. But now I love it. Tim Curry. Bill Skarsgård is a great Pennywise. I love his performance. But I also love Tim Curry's performance. And he is scary in this. You know, Tim Curry is such a fantastic actor because every role that he's in, he makes it different. And he doesn't have to have the prosthetic makeup on. He just has great acting range. And, you know, before this, he was Darkness in Legend, and that performance is totally different than what we got with Pennywise. But he's so good in this. I also love the cast, you know. The young Losers Club, they're all great. And I also love the adults. I know, like, the second half of this movie, not a lot of people love. I love it. I love the cast. I think they're perfect. They were perfect as the adult losers. Like in It Chapter 2 with this, like, they were perfect as well, but this for me has a lot more nostalgic to it, and so while this one is on my list because I just love it so much, I also love this movie so much, and I also just have the nostalgic feel, so this is still my favorite It movie, but I'm a big fan of, like, the It universe. Continuing on, we have another one that I mentioned in my last video, that is The Shining. Again, I had to talk about this. You know, didn't make my, top 31, but it was certainly going to be in part 2 if I was going to make it, which I'm making it now. Love The Shining. It's iconic. People know about it. I also love the made-for-TV movie. I think that's great. I think Dr. Sleep is a great sequel and also a film that stands on its own. I really just need to make a video talking about horror movie sequels that are also films that stand on their own, that are not the, traditional sequels. So that might be a video at some point I make. But The Shining I love. Grew up with this movie, saw it on TV several times, and it's still a movie I love today. We're going to do this back to back, and that is Friday the 13th Part 2 and Friday the 13th, the final chapter, aka Part 4. This is my second favorite Friday the 13th movie. I just love it so much. After Part 6, this is just close up there. If you're ranking the franchise, just the franchise alone, this is close up there. And then Part 2 is right there as well. some of my go-to Friday the 13th movies are Part 6, Part 4, and Part 2. I just love them so much. And I'm also a fan of Jason Takes Manhattan. That's in my top 5. But that's a go-to one. That's also a go-to movie. They're just fun. They're fun movies. This franchise is awesome. These movies are fun. This one's like legit scary at times. I think Sackhead Jason is, unpopular opinion, scarier than Hockey Mask Jason. Even though he's scary and intense at times, Jason in Part 2 is just downright scary. But I love both of them. Had to mention them. Big fan of the franchise. So yeah, they were going to be in this Part 2 video. I haven't mentioned another Halloween movie, but of course, Halloween 2. I love this artwork. Halloween 2. I saw for the first time the same night I saw John Carpenter's Halloween. It was USA Up All Night. USA Up All Night. And they were playing them back to back, and they both terrified me. I love scary movies now. I've always loved scary movies, but when I was like 8 years old watching this stuff on TV, I'm like, what is this? Scary stuff. And I think Halloween 2 it's not my favorite of the franchise. Obviously, the original is. But this is probably the scariest Halloween movie. I love the hospital setting. I think it's creepy. It sets this, grim, dark tone to the film. And so I love that. I love the cast. This is a cast that you, in my opinion, overall really root for. And you really don't want any of them to die. It's kind of sad when they do die. But Halloween 2, I love it. Absolutely love it. And Dick Warlock, I think he's my favorite Michael. I know, might be blasphemy, but, Nick Castle's iconic, and I love James Ducournau and Tyler Mane and so many others, but Dick Warlock, his slow walk is so creepy. Even still today when I watch it. Like, I feel awful for Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, when she's just running through that hospital, and he has just this slow walk, but he's like close up behind her every dang time. So I love it. Next one, Night of the Demons. Yes.
Judy, Roger, where you going? The party's just begun.
Night of the Demons. One of my go-to Halloween movies. Of course, I'll be watching this next month. I love it so much. Some days I like Part 2 better, but this is my favorite. This is my favorite. I love Night of the Demons. I either watch it in the beginning of October or I wait until the last week before Halloween, and I just love it so much. I can honestly I probably watch this movie twice a year. Like, I'll watch it in October, and then I'll randomly want to watch it again because I just love it so much. So, Night of the Demons, of course, I had to make this list. My second favorite vampire movie of all time, The Lost Boys. And, everybody knows about The Lost Boys. And you should know about The Lost Boys. If you've never seen The Lost Boys, go watch it. But The Lost Boys, I took my Blu-ray artwork and I made it into a 4K, and I do have the 4K obviously, but I was not a fan of that new 4K artwork. I think it's pretty bad. But I love this iconic artwork. This is great. And yeah, I just love this movie so much. So The Lost Boys, great characters, great soundtrack. Jason Patric, back then I just still love him today. But Jason Patric, yeah. One of my crushes, everybody. And I love Jamie Gertz as Star. She's great too. And Kiefer Sutherland. And of course, you have the two Coreys, which my favorite, Corey Haim, rest in peace. But I love that movie and I love the whole cast. Of course, I gotta talk about Scream 2. Scream 2 is, some days it's my favorite of the franchise, and some days it's a very close second. But I love Scream 2 so much. I think at times it definitely ups the antes of the first movie, because you have kills in this movie that just surprise you and shock you, honestly. And they're not afraid to go places as far as these characters that we love in the original movie that die in this film, aka Randy. I love Randy. I always hate when he dies in this, and I'm spoiling the movie. It's been out for 20 plus years, so if you've never seen it, I'm sorry. But yeah, heartbreaking when Randy dies. But this is, again, sometimes it goes back and forth. It's right now very close to being, well, it is very close up there with the first one. So, but Scream 2, I love it so much. Saw it in theaters. Well, I saw it when they when it was re-released in theaters, I saw it. So, Scream 2, I love. And lastly, you're probably like, where's some Rob Zombie in your last video? Well, I'm going to redeem myself and throw in House of a Thousand Corpses. So, I, again, like every one of these movies, love this movie so much. This is my favorite Rob Zombie movie. Lords of Salem being my second favorite. I make it part 3, of course I'll be there. But House of a Thousand Corpses. Such a fun Halloween movie to watch. I love watching this. At least, well, I watch it like 2 or 3 times a year. But I love watching it in October. It is a must for me. And again, I either watch it in the beginning of the month or towards the end of the month. But I love the characters. They're sick, they're demented, but they're iconic characters. Rest in peace, Karen Black, Sid Haig, a lot of other cast members that are in this that are no longer with us. But man, this movie's awesome. And yeah, it's the first time I saw it, I was just diving into horror movies, so I was a lot younger. And I didn't really get it, didn't understand it, wasn't sure if I liked it, and it took me a long time to go back and revisit it. And so when Rob Zombie announced that he was, announced that he was, sorry about that, drew a blank. When Rob Zombie announced that he was making Halloween, I wanted to go back and revisit his previous 2 movies. And so I love this movie, and I love Devil's Rejects. So anyway, that is, again, 51 through 32. And so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I wanted to talk about some of my other favorite horror movies. So maybe we'll do a part 3. If you want to see it, let me know. And we might do it this next 2 months. So anyway, much love to you all. As always, y'all are awesome, y'all rock. And with the positive out with the negative. And I'll talk to you later.